Leander Harrington stood silently by the expansive window of his luxurious San Francisco penthouse, overlooking the sparkling lights of the Golden Gate Bridge. It was nearly midnight, and the city lay stretched out beneath him, oblivious to the turmoil raging inside his heart. His fingers tightened around a set of crumpled photographs he'd received anonymously earlier that evening, images that had ripped his entire world apart. Turning abruptly from the window, Leander paced the room restlessly, his mind consumed with anger, doubt, and confusion. At 32, he had amassed an enormous fortune through sheer determination and unwavering belief in facts and logic. Yet tonight, his carefully constructed reality had shattered into pieces. The photographs in his hand showed his young, beautiful wife, Serafina, embracing another man, a stranger whose identity Leander couldn't determine. The betrayal felt personal, deep, and devastating. It cut into his heart with such ferocity that he struggled to breathe. His head pounded as the images replayed endlessly, each one mocking the happiness he believed was genuine. How could she do this? He muttered bitterly, pain darkening his emerald eyes. He clenched his jaw tightly, fighting the urge to confront her immediately. Serafina, the woman who had once embodied all his hopes, dreams, and love, had apparently deceived him completely. Just then, the penthouse door opened softly. Serafina stepped inside, her movements graceful yet cautious. At 26, she still radiated innocence and warmth, her chestnut hair cascading gently around delicate shoulders. Her gaze met Leander's, but upon seeing the fury in his eyes, her gentle smile faded instantly. "Leander, what's wrong?" she asked quietly, concern shadowing her voice as she approached him slowly. His grip tightened around the photographs as he thrust them toward her sharply. "Explain this, Serafina," he demanded harshly, voice trembling with barely controlled rage. "How long have you been lying to me?" Serafina took the photos carefully, her eyes widening in shock and disbelief. Her voice shook as she stared helplessly at him, confusion evident on her pale face. I don't understand. This isn't what you think, Leander. Please, listen to me. Isn't it?" Leander interrupted coldly, stepping back as if repulsed. "Those pictures don't lie. You've betrayed me. You've betrayed us." Serafina's hands trembled visibly as she reached toward him desperately. "Leander, you're wrong. Someone is trying to manipulate you. Please, give me a chance to explain." He cut her off sharply, anger blazing in his eyes. "Who is he, Serafina? Is he the father of your child, the child I foolishly believed was mine?" Serafina flinched as if physically struck, tears streaming down her cheeks, eyes wide with devastation. "Leander, how can you even ask that? This child is yours, I swear to you. Please, don't let suspicion destroy us." His face hardened into an expression of cold, unyielding resolve. "Your words mean nothing now. I trusted you, I loved you. And you've repaid me with deception and betrayal. Pack your belongings and leave tonight. I never want to see you again." "Leander, please," Serafina begged, her voice breaking painfully. "Don't do this. I love you." "Love?" Leander laughed bitterly, his voice thick with scorn. "If this is love, then I want no part of it. You've humiliated me enough. Get out." Serafina's face crumpled in agony, but seeing his unrelenting expression, she realized the futility of her pleas. Shattered and broken-hearted, she turned silently toward their bedroom to gather her things. Moments later, carrying only a small bag, she paused at the threshold, gazing back at the man she'd loved deeply and faithfully. "One day you'll realize your mistake," she whispered softly, sorrowfully. "And when you do, it might already be too late." Without waiting for a reply, Serafina quietly left, closing the door softly behind her. The silence that filled the penthouse was deafening, pressing down upon Leander with unbearable weight. Alone, his anger gradually gave way to grief, despair, and deep loneliness. He sank slowly onto the sofa, burying his head in his hands, unaware that his own sister, Cordelia, had orchestrated every detail of his suffering. Across the city, Cordelia Harrington sat quietly in her elegant townhouse, sipping a glass of champagne as she carefully observed the clock. A cold, satisfied smile touched her lips as she imagined her brother's agony, pleased that her plan had succeeded so perfectly. "You should have listened to me, Leander," she murmured softly, bitterness tinting her words. "I warned you she wasn't good enough for you. Now you finally understand." But miles away, Seraphina wandered aimlessly through the darkened streets, tears blurring her vision. Alone, pregnant, and betrayed by the only man she'd ever loved, she swore silently never to forgive him. The pain burned deep within her heart, fueled by the cruel injustice she'd suffered. Yet even in her anguish, Seraphina vowed to raise her child with strength, dignity, and resilience, qualities Leander had clearly lacked when he chose suspicion over trust. She didn't yet know the source of the deception, but she was determined to one day uncover the truth. As dawn approached, illuminating San Francisco in soft shades of gold, both Leander and Seraphina lay sleeplessly apart, each wounded deeply by a betrayal neither fully understood. The paths of their lives had split dramatically, driven apart by manipulation and mistrust. Neither could foresee the long years of separation ahead, nor the shocking secrets still hidden, waiting silently to unravel 20 years later, bringing them face to face once more, with a truth far more powerful and devastating than either imagined possible. 20 years had passed, transforming Leander Harrington from a proud, successful young millionaire into a formidable tycoon known across California for his ruthless business strategies and cold demeanor. In the decades since Seraphina's abrupt departure, he had become intensely private, closing himself off emotionally, pouring every ounce of energy into expanding his corporate empire. The loss of his marriage had hardened him, reinforcing the walls around his heart and fueling a deep-rooted mistrust of everyone who sought closeness. On a bright Tuesday afternoon, Leander sat at the head of a sleek mahogany conference table on the top floor of Harrington Tower, surrounded by executives who listened intently as he laid out plans for the company's latest acquisition. His presence was commanding, his deep voice measured and authoritative. Just as he prepared to conclude the meeting, the doors suddenly opened, drawing the attention of everyone in the room. A striking young man stood framed in the doorway, confident and poised, his clear green eyes locking immediately onto Leander. The executives fell silent, puzzled by the interruption. Leander stared sharply at the intruder, irritation flashing briefly across his face. "Excuse me, but who the hell are you, and how did you get past security?" Leander asked curtly, annoyance coloring his tone. "My name is Ellis," the young man replied calmly, stepping further into the room with unwavering confidence. "Ellis Harrington. I believe you're my father." A collective gasp rippled around the table, quickly turning into stunned silence. Leander's jaw clenched tightly, and he slowly rose from his seat, anger battling disbelief. Before he could respond, another figure appeared in the doorway, a woman whose presence instantly robbed him of breath. Seraphina stood there, framed by sunlight streaming through the windows behind her. She had matured into an elegant and confident woman, even more beautiful than he'd remembered. Her chestnut hair, now streaked subtly with silver, fell gracefully past her shoulders. Her eyes, though gentle, held an unmistakable strength forged through years of quiet resilience. "Hello, Leander," Seraphina spoke softly, her voice composed and steady despite the charged atmosphere. "It's been a very long time." Leander stared at her speechlessly, memories surging powerfully through his mind, memories he'd buried beneath years of bitterness and anger. Recovering quickly, he turned sharply to his stunned executives. "We'll finish this meeting later," he announced coldly. "Everyone out. Now." The executives quickly gathered their things, casting curious glances at the trio before departing hurriedly. As soon as the door shut behind them, Leander turned his gaze back to Seraphina, his expression guarded yet filled with raw, suppressed emotion. "What is this about, Seraphina?" he demanded sharply, hiding his turmoil behind an icy exterior. After 2 decades, you suddenly reappear with him, and claim he's my son. Serafina moved gracefully to Ellis's side, laying a protective hand gently on her son's shoulder. He is your son, Leander. Despite your accusations, I've never betrayed you, not then, and certainly not now. Ellis took a step forward, meeting Leander's gaze directly. I'm not here for your money or your name, Mr. Harrington. I'm here because I need your help. Leander narrowed his eyes suspiciously. Help? After all this time, what could you possibly need from me? Serafina's voice softened, sorrow flickering across her features. Ellis has a rare genetic heart condition. He's undergone several treatments, but nothing has worked. Doctors say only a closely related donor can save him. You are his last hope. The revelation struck Leander forcefully, piercing through his carefully maintained facade. He felt an unexpected surge of concern, followed swiftly by suspicion. He looked closely at Ellis, noticing for the first time just how clearly the young man resembled him, same striking eyes, strong jawline, proud bearing. His heart twisted painfully at the realization that he had missed 2 decades of this young man's life because of his own stubborn pride. How can I trust that he's truly mine? Leander asked, voice thick with conflicting emotions. Why wait 20 years to tell me? Serafina stepped forward gently, sorrow and quiet dignity etched into her face. Because 20 years ago, you refused to hear the truth. I tried to reach you again, Leander. Multiple times. But your sister, Cordelia, made sure every attempt failed. I finally realized you'd never believe me, not until you saw Ellis yourself. His eyes flashed sharply with anger at Cordelia's name, yet uncertainty still lingered. If this is true, I'll require absolute proof. I won't be manipulated again. Ellis nodded calmly, unbothered by Leander's skepticism. I'm ready for any tests you need. But understand something, Mr. Harrington, I'm not here to beg for a father's love. I grew up without you, and my mother gave me everything I needed. I'm here to survive, nothing more. Ellis's quiet strength resonated deeply with Leander, awakening an unexpected pride that startled him. He recognized in this young man the same determination and confidence that had driven his own success. Emotions warred fiercely within him, forcing him to carefully mask his inner turmoil. Fine, Leander said finally, voice carefully controlled. We'll conduct the necessary tests. If you're truly my son, I'll do everything possible to help. Serafina exhaled softly, relief evident in her eyes. She placed a gentle hand on Ellis's shoulder again, guiding him toward the door. Pausing briefly, she looked back at Leander, sadness clouding her gaze. I never wanted it to be this way, Leander, she whispered gently. I never wanted you to suffer or feel betrayed. All I ever wanted was your trust. He stared back at her silently, unable to voice the painful regret tightening his chest. She turned away without another word, leaving him standing alone in the empty room, overwhelmed by the crushing weight of his past mistakes. As the door shut softly behind them, Leander slumped into a chair, burying his face in his hands, struggling to make sense of the revelations that had suddenly shattered the isolation of his carefully constructed world. Guilt consumed him deeply, alongside a fierce determination to uncover the truth, no matter how painful. Across town, Serafina stood quietly by Ellis as they waited for the elevator. Tears welled silently in her eyes, but she quickly brushed them away, determined to remain strong. Are you all right, Mom? Ellis asked softly, placing a reassuring hand gently on her shoulder. Serafina offered a faint, brave smile. I will be. It's just harder than I imagined, facing him again after all these years. Ellis nodded slowly, his gaze serious. Whatever happens, remember we're not here to rewrite history. We're here to secure my future. She squeezed his hand lovingly, drawing strength from her son's quiet resilience. Yet deep inside, Serafina knew their reunion with Leander had set into motion events beyond their control, events that would unravel secrets buried long ago, changing all their lives in ways neither could yet imagine. In the days following their emotional reunion, Leander immersed himself fully into verifying Ellis's claim. Driven by a mix of curiosity, skepticism, and undeniable hope, he arranged thorough genetic testing at one of San Francisco's leading medical centers. Despite his outward composure, anxiety gnawed persistently at the edges of his consciousness. His sleep became restless, haunted by memories he'd suppressed for 2 decades, Serafina's tearful pleas, her devastated eyes, and the heavy silence that followed her departure. Meanwhile, Serafina remained composed yet cautious, limiting her interactions with Leander to polite exchanges whenever necessary. Though she knew the truth, the pain of being disbelieved years before lingered sharply, casting a shadow over any attempt at reconciliation. Her primary concern was Ellis, whose declining health filled her with quiet dread. The uncertainty surrounding the test results only deepened her worry, though she hid it carefully behind a mask of serene strength. At last, after a tense week of waiting, Leander received the results. Alone in his expansive penthouse, he opened the envelope with trembling fingers, his heart racing wildly. His eyes quickly scanned the document, his breath hitching sharply as the words finally sank in. Probability of parentage, 99.999% confirmed. Ellis Harrington is genetically confirmed as the biological child of Leander Harrington. Leander sat back slowly, emotions surging powerfully through him. A wave of regret crashed against his heart, nearly drowning him beneath the weight of guilt. For 20 years, he had allowed himself to believe a lie, one orchestrated so convincingly that it destroyed the lives of those he'd once loved more than anything. Without hesitation, he grabbed his keys and hurried to Serafina's modest apartment, situated in a quiet neighborhood far removed from the luxury he enjoyed. Arriving swiftly, he knocked anxiously at her door, breathless and unsettled. Serafina answered slowly, surprised by the intensity in his gaze. "Leander," she asked softly, stepping back slightly. "What is it?" He held up the papers, voice shaking with raw emotion. "The results, they confirm Ellis is mine. Serafina, you were telling the truth all along. I was wrong, so horribly wrong." Serafina's eyes shimmered with unshed tears, though she maintained composure. "I never lied to you, Leander. You chose to believe someone else instead of trusting your own wife." "I know," he admitted quietly, his voice breaking slightly. "You have every right to despise me, but please, I want a chance to make things right. Ellis is my son, our son, and I need to help him." She studied him closely, recognizing genuine remorse in his emerald eyes. Slowly, cautiously, she nodded. "Ellis needs you more than ever now. The doctors say his condition is deteriorating rapidly. Without immediate intervention, he might not survive much longer." Leander's heart tightened painfully. "Then let's not waste another moment. I'll arrange the surgery immediately. No expense spared, no delay." Within days, specialists had arranged for the delicate procedure Ellis required. As Leander visited the hospital daily, spending hours sitting silently beside his son's bed, he began to form a tentative yet profound connection with the young man whose existence he had denied for 2 decades. One evening, as Ellis rested quietly after a long day of tests, Leander found himself alone with Serafina in the softly illuminated hospital waiting area. Silence lingered between them until Leander finally spoke, his voice low and filled with vulnerability. "Serafina, there's something you must know. After you left, I tried desperately to erase you from my heart, but I never succeeded. Not truly. You've haunted me for 20 years, a ghost of my greatest regret." She looked away briefly, hiding the sudden tears that filled her eyes. When she finally spoke, her voice trembled softly. "I loved you completely, Leander. Your rejection nearly destroyed me. Ellis was the only thing keeping me alive. Raising him alone forced me to become stronger, but I never stopped loving you, not entirely." He reached toward her gently, placing a cautious hand atop hers. She flinched momentarily, then gradually relaxed beneath his touch. "I don't deserve your forgiveness, Serafina, but I swear to you now, I'll spend the rest of my life earning it. I won't fail you or Ellis again." Their eyes met, conveying unspoken words, old wounds slowly beginning to heal. But the tender moment abruptly ended and Leander's phone vibrated insistently. He checked the screen, recognizing the number immediately. It was his sister, Cordelia. Stepping aside, he answered tersely. "What is it, Cordelia?" "Leander," her voice came sharply, edged with irritation. "I heard you've been associating with Serafina again. Are you out of your mind? She's playing you, just like before. Don't be foolish." Anger surged swiftly through Leander, clarity finally breaking through his long-held confusion. "Cordelia, you knew about Ellis, didn't you? You kept me from him deliberately. You lied to me all these years. Why?" Cordelia's voice hardened coldly. "I did what was necessary. That woman never deserved to be a Harrington. You were blinded by love and weakness. I saved you from a life of misery." Leander's voice trembled dangerously. "No, Cordelia. You stole 2 decades from me, decades I'll never get back. Stay away from my family." Ending the call sharply, Leander turned back to Serafina, eyes filled with deep remorse. Cordelia was behind everything, all those years ago. She destroyed us out of envy and prejudice. Serafina's face paled slightly, yet relief flooded her expression as the full truth finally emerged. "I always suspected it. She despised me from the moment we met." He stepped closer, gently taking her hands. "We'll confront Cordelia together when Ellis recovers. She won't get away with this again. But right now, our priority is Ellis, and making up for lost time." Serafina nodded slowly, feeling a faint spark of hope reigniting within her heart. For the first time in decades, she allowed herself to believe that perhaps true happiness wasn't entirely lost. Meanwhile, across town, Cordelia paced angrily within her luxurious townhouse. Fury filled her as she considered the possibility of losing control over Leander once more. Picking up her phone, she dialed an unlisted number, her voice cold and authoritative. "It's Cordelia Harrington. I need you to dig deeper, find something that permanently destroys Serafina's reputation. Do whatever it takes." Ending the call abruptly, she sank into a plush chair, determination blazing fiercely within her eyes. Cordelia had always controlled the narrative, shaping reality according to her desires. She refused to relinquish that power now, not to Serafina, Ellis, or anyone else. Yet she couldn't foresee the storm approaching, the shocking revelations still hidden, waiting silently in the shadows, ready to emerge and permanently alter all their lives once more. Days later, in the hushed atmosphere of San Francisco's most prestigious hospital, Ellis lay quietly in a private room, awaiting the surgery that could determine his fate. Serafina rarely left his side, constantly offering gentle reassurances, yet anxiety clouded her eyes. Leander was also present, though he maintained a respectful distance, observing the profound bond between mother and son with a bittersweet ache. He recognized how deeply he'd hurt them, and guilt gnawed incessantly at his heart. Finally, the surgeon, a renowned specialist named Dr. Malcolm Everly, entered the room, exuding calm confidence as he outlined the complex procedure to Ellis, Serafina, and Leander. Serafina listened intently, while Leander focused sharply on every detail, determined that no mistakes would compromise Ellis's chance at survival. As the team prepared Ellis for surgery, Leander took a moment alone with his son, standing quietly beside the hospital bed. He studied the young man's determined face, struck by Ellis's resilience, which mirrored his own stubbornness and Serafina's strength. "Ellis," Leander began quietly, voice thick with emotion, "I haven't earned the right to give you advice, or even ask forgiveness. But I want you to know that from now on, I'm here for you, completely. I won't abandon you again." Ellis turned his head slowly, meeting his father's gaze directly. After a thoughtful pause, a faint smile crossed his lips. "I appreciate that," he said sincerely. "Maybe we can't rewrite the past, but there's still a chance to build something new." Leander nodded slowly, relief mingling with gratitude. "When you get through this surgery, we'll start fresh, as a family." The medical team soon wheeled Ellis away to the operating theater, leaving Serafina and Leander alone in tense silence. Hours passed slowly as they sat side by side in the waiting area, each lost in their own thoughts, occasionally glancing at each other with guarded tenderness. Finally, the surgeon emerged, exhaustion and satisfaction blending on his face. "The surgery went extremely well. Ellis is stable, and his prognosis looks promising." Overwhelmed, Serafina exhaled shakily, tears filling her eyes. She reached instinctively for Leander's hand, gripping it tightly. He squeezed back gently, silently offering strength. Gratitude softened the lines of his tense expression, and for the first time, they shared a moment of pure relief, free of the shadows from their complicated past. As Ellis recovered over the following days, Leander and Serafina cautiously began rebuilding the delicate threads of their relationship. Conversations initially revolved only around Ellis, but gradually expanded into memories of happier times, slowly breaking down the walls erected by years of hurt. Meanwhile, Leander hadn't forgotten Cordelia's betrayal. Determined to uncover the extent of his sister's deceit, he quietly hired a trusted investigator named Gideon Blake to delve deeply into Cordelia's past actions. Gideon swiftly uncovered troubling evidence, a web of deception that extended far beyond merely destroying Leander's marriage. One rainy evening, Gideon arrived at Leander's penthouse, presenting him with a thick file of documents. "Your suspicions were correct," Gideon said gravely. "Cordelia orchestrated everything, falsified the photos, intercepted letters from Serafina, and systematically isolated you. But there's something even more disturbing." Leander's stomach tightened sharply as Gideon paused, clearly hesitant. "Tell me," Leander demanded firmly. "I need to know everything." Gideon's expression hardened. 20 years ago, shortly after Serafina's departure, your mother, Eleanor, passed away suddenly from complications following minor surgery. At the time, everyone believed it was an unfortunate medical accident. However, there are indications Cordelia may have tampered with your mother's medication, ensuring she never recovered. Leander recoiled sharply, disbelief clashing violently with horror. "Are you saying Cordelia killed our mother to control the family fortune?" Gideon nodded grimly. "The evidence strongly suggests so. Cordelia's actions went unnoticed because no one suspected family betrayal. But the pattern is unmistakable." The revelation shattered Leander entirely, forcing him to face not only Cordelia's cruelty but also his own blindness in trusting her implicitly for decades. Anger, grief, and deep betrayal surged simultaneously within him, threatening to overwhelm him completely. Determined to confront her directly, Leander arranged a meeting with Cordelia at the Harrington family estate outside the city. She arrived confidently, unaware that Leander had uncovered the truth. As they stood facing each other in the grand, dimly lit drawing room of their childhood home, Cordelia smiled coolly. "What's this about, Leander?" she asked dismissively. "I don't have time for your sentimental nonsense." Leander's voice trembled dangerously. "Did you kill our mother, Cordelia?" Her eyes widened briefly before narrowing sharply. "Don't be absurd. Who put that idea into your head, Serafina?" "No," he replied coldly, stepping closer. "I discovered it myself. All your lies, manipulations, betrayals, everything is exposed. The truth about Serafina, about Ellis, about Mother. How could you?" Cordelia's composure fractured, desperation flickering across her face. "I did what had to be done. You were throwing everything away on that nobody, Serafina. Mother always sided with you, never seeing my worth. I deserved control over the Harrington fortune, not you. You destroyed countless lives, Cordelia," Leander countered fiercely. You cost me 2 decades with my son, the woman I loved, and our own mother. I can never forgive that. Cordelia's voice turned icy, her expression venomous. Your weakness caused all of this. If you hadn't married beneath you, none of this would have happened. Blame yourself. Leander stared at her, disgust mingling with sorrow. The authorities will deal with you now. Your greed ends here. With that, Gideon and several detectives stepped quietly into the room, arresting Cordelia swiftly. She fought briefly before accepting defeat, casting one final hateful glare toward Leander as officers escorted her away. Standing alone afterward, Leander struggled to absorb the crushing weight of everything revealed. He had gained truth, but at a painful cost. Emotionally exhausted, he returned to Seraphina and Ellis, needing their presence more than ever. Entering Ellis's hospital room quietly, Leander found Seraphina beside their sleeping son. She turned toward him, immediately sensing his turmoil. Without hesitation, she moved close, gently touching his face, searching his eyes for answers. What happened, Leander? She asked softly, voice filled with concern. He drew her tightly into his embrace, whispering the truth gently into her hair. As he spoke, she listened silently, holding him fiercely. Neither said anything afterward, simply standing together, letting mutual support ease the heavy burden of their shared pain. Though wounds from Cordelia's betrayal remained deep, Leander and Seraphina finally began healing together. Ellis's successful recovery brought newfound hope, yet both knew the road ahead would require patience and understanding. Yet even as they found cautious peace, one last hidden secret awaited, one Cordelia had meticulously concealed, ensuring it remained undiscovered until the perfect moment. A secret powerful enough to threaten everything once more, poised silently to emerge and permanently alter the lives they fought so desperately to rebuild. As Ellis slowly recovered from his successful surgery, the Harrington family began to cautiously navigate a new chapter in their lives. Seraphina and Leander, though deeply scarred by past betrayals, were now unified by a shared commitment to their son's future. They spent long hours together in the hospital, gradually breaking through layers of hurt and mistrust that had accumulated over 20 painful years. Leander made every effort to atone for the years he had lost, not only with Ellis but also with Seraphina. He became a regular presence in their lives, carefully balancing the desire to be supportive with a sensitivity toward the trauma he'd inflicted. Seraphina, though initially guarded, found herself increasingly comforted by Leander's genuine remorse and the sincerity of his actions. Slowly, carefully, their interactions began to carry echoes of the deep connection they once shared. One afternoon, after Ellis had been discharged and was resting comfortably in Leander's penthouse, Seraphina found herself alone with Leander in the sunlit living room. Silence hung delicately between them until Leander finally spoke, his voice soft and hesitant. Seraphina, I know I can never fully erase the pain I caused, he began carefully, meeting her eyes directly. But I'm determined to prove to you that I've changed. I want to earn your trust back, no matter how long it takes. Seraphina sighed softly, looking down briefly before raising her gaze once more. I see how you've changed, Leander. And Ellis sees it too. But forgiveness doesn't happen overnight. We lost 20 years because you didn't trust me. That doesn't disappear easily. He nodded solemnly, accepting her honesty without argument. You're right, and I don't expect instant forgiveness. But I promise to be patient. I'll wait as long as it takes. She studied him thoughtfully, appreciating the vulnerability he'd never allowed himself before. I hope you mean that, she said quietly, voice filled with cautious hope. Days passed, and their tentative bond strengthened slowly. Seraphina found herself frequently returning to memories of their early life together, times filled with laughter, intimacy, and genuine happiness. The realization that those memories still held power over her emotions unsettled her deeply. Yet, she knew she could no longer deny the truth, she still loved Leander, despite everything. One evening, as a gentle rain fell over the city, Leander invited Serafina and Ellis to stay for dinner at the penthouse. The three sat comfortably around the elegant dining table, engaging in conversations filled with warmth and genuine ease. Ellis, feeling stronger by the day, watched his parents carefully, sensing the fragile yet powerful connection slowly reigniting between them. After dinner, Ellis excused himself, leaving Serafina and Leander alone. For a moment, silence filled the room until Leander finally broke it softly. "Do you remember our first anniversary?" he asked quietly, eyes reflecting distant memories. "We were caught in a storm on the coast, and instead of being upset, you laughed. You said storms brought us closer, made us appreciate the calm." Serafina smiled faintly, warmth flickering gently in her eyes. "I remember," she murmured softly. "We sat soaked in the car, laughing like children." Leander stepped closer, cautiously reaching out to touch her hand. "We've weathered another storm, Serafina. Maybe this one can bring us closer too." She hesitated briefly, torn between instinctive caution and the overwhelming desire to embrace happiness again. Yet as she gazed into Leander's sincere eyes, her resistance melted away. Slowly, she nodded, allowing him to gently pull her closer. His voice was barely a whisper. "I never stopped loving you, Serafina. Even when I hated myself for what I'd done, my heart always belonged to you." Tears filled her eyes, but this time, they carried hope instead of pain. "I tried so hard to hate you, Leander, but I couldn't. My heart always refused." They leaned in slowly, lips meeting in a tender, gentle kiss, a moment that bridged 2 decades of separation. It felt like coming home, like reclaiming something precious they'd lost but never truly forgotten. In the days that followed, their relationship blossomed quietly, carefully nurtured by mutual respect, trust, and rediscovered love. Ellis observed them fondly, deeply grateful to finally see his parents united. For the first time in his life, he felt he had a complete family. However, even as happiness returned, a new threat lurked silently, ready to shatter their peace. Cordelia, still imprisoned but burning with hatred, had not given up her determination to destroy Serafina. Secretly, she contacted a ruthless associate, instructing him to uncover any hidden secret in Serafina's past, anything that could devastate the fragile happiness she'd built with Leander. Weeks later, as Serafina returned to her apartment one evening, she found an anonymous envelope waiting ominously on her doorstep. With trembling fingers, she opened it, her heart racing anxiously as she read the short, typed message. "I know what happened in New Orleans. If you don't leave Leander immediately, he'll learn the truth." Serafina's blood ran cold, panic tightening painfully around her heart. Memories from a dark chapter of her past resurfaced violently, threatening everything she'd fought to rebuild. Terrified, she hid the message away, desperately hoping to contain this threat alone. But Leander immediately noticed her distress. That evening, as they sat together in the penthouse, he gently confronted her, voice filled with concern. "Serafina, something's wrong. Please, talk to me." She hesitated, eyes filled with anguish. "Leander, there's something from my past, something painful that I never wanted you to know. Someone's threatening to reveal it." He cupped her face gently, urging softly, "Whatever it is, we'll face it together. Trust me, Serafina." Gathering courage from his steadfast support, she finally confessed, voice shaking with emotion. "After you threw me out, I moved to New Orleans. I was lost, vulnerable. A man named Adrian offered me support. He seemed kind at first, but he was controlling, abusive. I managed to escape him, but before I left, he was severely injured during an altercation with a friend who helped me. I never knew if Adrian survived. I fled and never looked back." Leander listened silently, processing her painful revelation. When he finally spoke, his voice was gentle, protective. "You're not responsible for what happened, Serafina. I won't let anyone use this against you." She shook her head desperately. "But what if Adrian died? If Cordelia's associate discovered this, they could accuse me of murder. Leander drew her close, voice firm with determination. Then we'll find the truth ourselves. Together, we'll end this threat once and for all. Reassured by his unwavering strength, Seraphina agreed. They immediately hired Gideon Blake again, who swiftly uncovered the truth. Adrian had survived the injury but had later been imprisoned for unrelated crimes. The threat was a bluff, an empty attempt to intimidate Seraphina. Leander confronted Cordelia personally, warning her fiercely against further interference. She bitterly accepted defeat, but secretly vowed one final revenge, one more hidden truth she had carefully guarded for years, something even darker and more devastating. Yet, unaware of Cordelia's final move, Leander and Seraphina drew even closer, their bond stronger than ever. Trust deepened, wounds healed, and love, born from trials and pain, became unbreakable. However, neither suspected that Cordelia had set into motion events that would soon unveil one last devastating secret, a truth so profound and shocking it would threaten to rip their newfound happiness apart, forcing them once again to confront unimaginable betrayal. As months passed, tranquility seemed to settle over the Harrington household, allowing Leander, Seraphina, and Ellis to slowly rebuild their lives together. Their penthouse, once cold and filled with painful memories, had gradually become a place of warmth, laughter, and genuine love. Despite occasional whispers in society about the scandal surrounding Cordelia, the Harrington family remained resilient, focused solely on their newfound happiness. Ellis had fully recovered, becoming stronger each day, embodying the best qualities of both his parents. Leander embraced fatherhood wholeheartedly, savoring every moment spent with his son. Meanwhile, Seraphina had gradually opened her heart once more, finally trusting Leander completely, assured of his sincerity and unwavering love. Yet beneath this surface of contentment, a hidden storm brewed silently, waiting for the perfect moment to unleash chaos. From her prison cell, Cordelia Harrington had plotted one final, destructive revenge against her brother and Seraphina. Determined never to accept defeat, she had secretly arranged the release of a devastating letter, a document she'd hidden carefully for 20 years. One chilly afternoon, Leander received an unexpected call from Gideon Blake. The investigator sounded tense and deeply troubled, immediately filling Leander with apprehension. "Leander, I have something urgent to discuss," Gideon began carefully. "Cordelia left behind a sealed envelope with instructions that it be delivered to you exactly 6 months after her incarceration. I managed to intercept it, but you need to see what's inside immediately." Leander's heart tightened sharply. "Bring it here. Now." Within the hour, Gideon arrived at the penthouse, handing Leander the envelope without preamble. Alone in his study, Leander opened it cautiously, anxiety gripping his chest. Inside, he found a neatly folded letter, written in Cordelia's unmistakably elegant handwriting. "Dearest brother. If you're reading this, my revenge is finally complete. 20 years ago, Seraphina lied to you about one crucial thing, the identity of Ellis's biological father. She was indeed pregnant with another man's child, a secret she hid masterfully from you both. The man you thought was only a friend, your beloved and loyal attorney, Jonathan Eastwood, is Ellis's true father. You raised a stranger's son and sacrificed your life to a woman who deceived you. Your devoted sister, Cordelia." Leander's hand shook violently, the letter slipping from his fingers onto the desk. Disbelief and anger surged fiercely, clashing violently within him. Jonathan Eastwood had been his closest confidant, his most trusted ally for decades. The thought of such profound betrayal felt impossible, yet Cordelia's words carried a chilling ring of potential truth. Needing answers, Leander immediately confronted Jonathan, arranging an urgent meeting at a discreet location downtown. Jonathan arrived promptly, sensing tension in Leander's terse request. "What's wrong, Leander?" Jonathan asked, concern evident in his voice. Leander stared sharply into Jonathan's eyes, desperately searching for honesty. "Tell me the truth, Jonathan. Are you Ellis's biological father? Jonathan paled instantly, clearly stunned by the question. After a tense silence, he exhaled shakily, nodding slowly, deep remorse filling his expression. Yes, he admitted quietly. But please, listen, I never betrayed you intentionally. It happened after you threw Serafina out. She was lost, frightened, alone. She turned to me as a friend. One night we shared comfort we both regretted afterward. She deeply loved you, and we vowed never to tell you. When Ellis was born, I stepped aside completely, convinced it was best for everyone. Leander's heart shattered, the weight of the revelation crushing him completely. Betrayal from his closest friend, the woman he loved, and the sister he once trusted threatened to destroy him. Unable to speak, he left abruptly, consumed by grief, anger, and profound confusion. Returning home, he confronted Serafina immediately, heart heavy with anguish. She saw pain etched deeply into his face and immediately realized what had happened. Leander, she whispered desperately, tears welling rapidly. Please, let me explain. You lied to me again, he interrupted bitterly. For 20 years, you allowed me to believe Ellis was mine. Jonathan admitted everything. How could you? Serafina's voice broke painfully. I wanted to tell you, but I was terrified. You abandoned me, Leander. Jonathan offered support, friendship, I was vulnerable and hurt. It was one night, a terrible mistake we both regretted deeply. When I discovered I was pregnant, I couldn't bring myself to hurt you further. I swear, I never intended to deceive you. Leander's anger gradually gave way to anguish, the complexity of their situation overwhelming him. You let me build a relationship with Ellis, thinking he was mine. She interrupted gently, voice filled with sincerity. He is your son, Leander, in every meaningful way. Ellis has your courage, your compassion, your strength. Fatherhood is more than biology, it's about love, sacrifice, dedication. Jonathan knew this too, which is why he stepped aside willingly. Leander stood silently, emotions clashing violently within his heart. Just then, Ellis entered the room quietly, having overheard the conversation. His face was pale, eyes filled with confusion and pain. Is this true? Ellis asked, voice trembling. Jonathan Eastwood is my biological father. Serafina approached him carefully, eyes brimming with tears. Ellis, please, let me explain. We never meant to hurt you. Jonathan respected Leander, loved him like a brother. We both decided keeping the secret was better for everyone. Ellis shook his head slowly, clearly struggling. You both decided to hide my true identity from me. I deserved to know the truth from the beginning. Leander stepped toward Ellis cautiously, voice gentle yet firm. Ellis, biology doesn't define our bond. You are my son, I raised you in my heart from the moment I accepted you. This revelation changes nothing about my love or commitment to you. Ellis looked carefully at the man he'd come to deeply respect and trust. Slowly, he nodded, understanding gradually replacing confusion. I know, and I still see you as my father. But I need time to process this. With that, Ellis left quietly, leaving Leander and Serafina alone, both shaken and heartbroken. They stood silently, neither speaking for several long minutes, until Serafina finally spoke softly. I'm sorry, Leander. I know you may never forgive me, but please believe my love for you has always been real. Leander exhaled heavily, turning toward her, anguish evident in his eyes. I believe you. But the pain of betrayal, again, is almost too much. Serafina moved closer gently, her voice trembling softly. Then let's find our way through it together. We've survived far worse. Cordelia's final revenge failed because it can't break the bond we've built. Leander searched her eyes deeply, seeing sincerity, love, and vulnerability clearly reflected. Slowly, cautiously, he embraced her, desperately hoping to find strength and forgiveness within their shared pain. Yet even as they struggled toward healing, neither knew Cordelia had arranged for the media to receive identical letters detailing Ellis's parentage, planning to publicly humiliate them. The Harrington family would soon face public scandal, judgment, and yet another painful test of their strength. However, what Cordelia hadn't anticipated was the resilience, courage, and genuine love Leander, Seraphina, and Ellis had forged through every previous tragedy. Instead of destroying them, this revelation would ultimately solidify their bonds, proving beyond doubt that family, love, and loyalty were stronger than secrets, betrayal, and revenge. Their hardest battle lay just ahead, but so did their greatest victory, a triumph built on trust, forgiveness, and unbreakable love. In the days following Cordelia's calculated revelation, a storm of scandal erupted around the Harrington family. Newspapers, television broadcasts, and social media channels were ablaze with the shocking news that Ellis was not biologically Leander Harrington's son, but rather the result of an affair between Seraphina and the trusted family attorney, Jonathan Eastwood. The intense scrutiny and speculation threatened to tear apart the fragile peace they had so carefully rebuilt. Paparazzi camped outside Leander's penthouse, capturing every attempt at normalcy in turning their private struggles into public spectacle. The media painted Seraphina as manipulative and deceitful, Jonathan as a betrayer of trust, and Leander as the tragic victim once again deceived by the woman he loved. Despite the relentless pressure, Leander remained fiercely protective of Seraphina and Ellis, shielding them from the brunt of public criticism. But privately, each day became a struggle as he wrestled with complex emotions, pain, betrayal, anger, and love, warring within his heart. Although he wanted desperately to move forward, the public humiliation made forgiveness even more challenging. Meanwhile, Ellis endured tremendous emotional turmoil. He spent hours isolated in his room, grappling with a reality that seemed cruelly surreal. Jonathan Eastwood had attempted to reach out repeatedly, expressing deep remorse and seeking forgiveness, but Ellis had thus far refused any contact, needing space to process everything. As pressure mounted, Seraphina finally decided she must confront the situation head-on. She chose to publicly address the scandal, agreeing to a high-profile interview with respected journalist Eleanor Duval. The decision was risky, yet she knew honesty and openness offered the only hope of restoring peace. On the night of the interview, millions tuned in, awaiting a dramatic confession or further scandalous revelations. Seated calmly across from Eleanor, Seraphina appeared composed yet vulnerable, her eyes reflecting genuine sorrow. "Mrs. Harrington," Eleanor began gently, "can you tell us, in your own words, exactly what happened 20 years ago?" Taking a deep breath, Seraphina began speaking softly yet confidently, her voice trembling slightly with emotion. 20 years ago, I was unjustly accused of betraying my husband, Leander. He threw me out of our home, pregnant and terrified. At my lowest point, Jonathan Eastwood, a family friend, offered support and friendship. In a moment of vulnerability and despair, our relationship crossed boundaries we both deeply regretted. Shortly afterward, I discovered I was pregnant. Eleanor interjected carefully, "Did you knowingly deceive Leander Harrington?" Seraphina shook her head firmly, sincerity shining clearly in her eyes. "No, I never intended deception. I genuinely believed Leander was Ellis's biological father. It was only years later, after discovering Ellis had a rare genetic condition not matching Leander's medical records, that I understood the possibility Jonathan might be his biological father." The interviewer's tone softened slightly. "Then why not reveal this immediately?" Tears gathered gently in Seraphina's eyes. "Because Ellis was my whole world, and Leander had finally accepted him. Jonathan and I agreed revealing the truth would cause irreparable harm. We chose silence to protect Ellis and prevent further heartbreak. Do you regret your decision now?" Eleanor pressed gently. Seraphina nodded slowly, honesty clear in her voice. "I regret causing pain, but not the intention behind the decision. Our choice came from love, not malice or deceit. Throughout the interview, Leander watched closely from home, moved profoundly by Serafina's raw honesty and courage. Her sincere words slowly chipped away at his lingering hurt, reminding him of the woman he'd always admired deeply, strong, honest, and fiercely protective of those she loved. However, even as the interview seemed to calm public opinion, Ellis remained withdrawn and troubled. Recognizing his son's pain, Leander approached him carefully one evening, finding Ellis quietly staring out over the city skyline from the balcony. "Ellis," Leander began cautiously, "talk to me. I need to understand what you're feeling." Ellis glanced toward him, vulnerability visible beneath his guarded exterior. "I don't even know how to explain. My whole life feels like a lie." Leander stepped closer, his voice gentle yet firm. "Your life is not a lie, Ellis. Truth is more than biology. It's in the experiences we've shared, the struggles we've overcome, and the love we built together." Ellis sighed deeply, voice trembling with emotion. "But Jonathan Eastwood, how do I face him, knowing he's my biological father?" Leander placed a supportive hand gently on Ellis's shoulder. "You face him honestly, with the courage you've always shown. Jonathan made mistakes, just as I did, but he loves you deeply. He stepped aside willingly so you could have stability, so our family might have peace. At least give him a chance to explain." Ellis studied Leander carefully, seeing genuine sincerity reflected clearly in his father's eyes. Slowly, he nodded. "Maybe you're right. Avoiding him won't heal anything." Days later, Ellis finally met privately with Jonathan. The meeting began tense and cautious, but gradually softened as Jonathan openly expressed deep remorse, clarifying his intentions had always been honorable. Ellis listened carefully, gradually coming to understand and even forgive Jonathan's past decisions. As Ellis began healing emotionally, Serafina and Leander cautiously rekindled their fragile relationship. Their bond, tested fiercely through scandal, betrayal, and public scrutiny, had emerged stronger precisely because they had chosen honesty, compassion, and forgiveness over bitterness and resentment. Just as peace seemed possible once again, Leander received an unexpected visitor, Gideon Blake. The investigator's face was troubled as he handed Leander another envelope. "I'm sorry, Leander," Gideon said quietly. "This just arrived from Cordelia. She insisted you read it." Heart tightening anxiously, Leander opened the envelope, finding Cordelia's handwritten note inside. "Dearest brother. There's still one thing left unsaid, one secret I kept even from myself for years. Before Mother died, she revealed something shocking: you and I are not siblings by blood. You were adopted as an infant, a child abandoned anonymously. The Harrington name, the legacy, the fortune, all belong to me, not you. Your life is a fraud, brother. Everything you've achieved is built upon lies. Cordelia." Leander's hands shook violently as he read the words. If true, the implications were devastating. Everything he believed about his identity, heritage, and legitimacy shattered in an instant. But this time, rather than despair, Leander felt sudden clarity. Cordelia had always used secrets as weapons, exploiting vulnerability to inflict pain. Determined never to be manipulated again, he calmly placed the letter aside, finally understanding something profoundly important. Blood didn't define him, only choices did. That night, Leander gathered Serafina and Ellis together, sharing the revelation openly. He spoke calmly, sincerely, eyes reflecting newfound strength. "No matter who my biological parents were, nothing changes who I've chosen to become," he said firmly. "Our family was never built on blood, it was built on love, trust, loyalty, and forgiveness. Cordelia intended this revelation to destroy me, but instead, it set me free." Serafina smiled warmly, taking his hand lovingly. "You're right. Cordelia's secrets no longer hold power. We've proven repeatedly that love conquers deception and betrayal." Ellis nodded solemnly, voice filled with pride. "This changes nothing. You're my father, Leander, in every way that matters. Standing together, united and resilient, the Harrington family finally reclaimed their lives, casting aside manipulation, scandal, and secrets forever. They understood now more than ever that true family was born not from biology or wealth, but from bonds forged through shared trials, forgiveness, and unwavering love. Yet even as peace returned, they knew the future remained uncertain, but together, unafraid, they faced whatever lay ahead, confident nothing could break the unshakable bond they'd built. The months following Cordelia's final, devastating revelation brought profound transformation and healing to the Harrington family. No longer chained to secrets and deception, Leander, Seraphina, and Ellis began to fully embrace the possibility of a life built solely on trust, love, and genuine honesty. Public interest in their personal drama gradually faded, replaced by admiration for their resilience and courage in the face of scandal and betrayal. In the midst of these calmer days, Leander began to deeply explore the truth of his origins. With Seraphina's unwavering support, he undertook a careful, respectful investigation into his past, not driven by fear or insecurity, but by a genuine desire for clarity. With the assistance of Gideon Blake, he finally uncovered the truth that Cordelia had so callously exposed. He was indeed adopted as a newborn, left anonymously at a small orphanage in Northern California. This discovery could have broken a weaker man, but for Leander, it served as a powerful affirmation of his identity. He understood clearly that family was defined not by the blood running through one's veins, but by the love, loyalty, and respect shared between hearts. His adoptive parents had chosen him out of love, given him a name and a legacy, and that, more than any biological connection, made him a Harrington. Seraphina stood closely by his side throughout this journey, offering comfort and strength. Their relationship, tempered by adversity, became stronger and deeper than it had ever been before. One quiet evening, as they watched the sunset from their balcony, Leander turned to Seraphina, his eyes filled with sincerity and vulnerability. "Seraphina," he said softly, gently taking her hand in his. "Our journey has been filled with pain and betrayal, yet through all of it, my heart always knew one truth, that you are the only woman I've ever truly loved. You've given me forgiveness, strength, and a reason to believe in second chances. Will you marry me again, despite everything?" Seraphina's eyes shimmered gently with tears of joy. Without hesitation, she squeezed his hand warmly, voice tender and sure. "Yes, Leander. I want nothing more than to share my life with you again, free from the shadows of the past." Ellis was overjoyed by his parents' renewed commitment, deeply moved by their courage in overcoming seemingly insurmountable odds. Together, they planned a simple yet heartfelt ceremony, attended only by those who genuinely supported their happiness, Jonathan Eastwood included. On a sunny spring afternoon, the Harrington family gathered at a quiet vineyard just outside San Francisco. The lush hills, blooming with vibrant colors, seemed to symbolize their own renewal and growth. Leander stood proudly, waiting beneath a flower-adorned arbor as Seraphina approached, stunning in a simple, elegant gown. Ellis escorted her down the aisle, his eyes bright with genuine happiness, reflecting his deep gratitude for their newfound unity. The ceremony was intimate, filled with sincere vows, promises of forgiveness, compassion, and unwavering love. As they exchanged rings, Leander gently brushed a tear from Seraphina's cheek, silently promising never to let secrets or mistrust cloud their lives again. Following the ceremony, as family and close friends shared warm congratulations, Jonathan Eastwood approached cautiously, his expression humble yet sincere. "Leander," Jonathan began quietly, "I know our friendship may never fully recover, but I want you to understand one final thing. From the moment Ellis was born, I knew stepping aside was the right choice, not just for him, but for you and Seraphina as well. You've always been his true father, regardless of biology." Leander studied Jonathan thoughtfully, finally extending his hand in a genuine gesture of reconciliation. "I believe you, Jonathan. The past can't be undone, but we can choose to forgive, learn, and move forward. Thank you for being honest now." Jonathan nodded gratefully, relief evident on his face. Ellis watched the exchange with quiet approval, finally feeling the weight of past conflicts lift completely. Days turned into weeks, weeks into months, and the Harrington family thrived. Their home became filled with warmth, laughter, and genuine happiness. Leander embraced fatherhood openly, not just with Ellis but by mentoring young adults who had grown up without fathers themselves. His experiences became powerful lessons in forgiveness, second chances, and the importance of choosing family. Ellis pursued his passion for social justice, inspired by the resilience he'd witnessed within his own family. He became a voice for the voiceless, using his personal story of overcoming adversity to inspire hope and courage in others facing struggles. Meanwhile, Serafina, now fully secure in her place within the Harrington family, dedicated herself to charitable work, becoming a respected figure in San Francisco society, not merely as Leander Harrington's wife, but as a woman whose strength, grace, and compassion had inspired countless others to find courage in their darkest moments. One evening, exactly 1 year after their remarriage, Leander, Serafina, and Ellis stood quietly on their penthouse balcony, overlooking the city lights. The atmosphere was serene, carrying a deep sense of peace they had long sought. Leander spoke quietly, gratitude evident in his voice. "Looking back, it's hard to believe we survived everything we endured. Yet here we are, stronger and closer than ever." Serafina leaned gently into his embrace, eyes shining softly. "Our trials didn't destroy us, they forged us into something unbreakable." Ellis smiled warmly, voice filled with sincerity. "You both showed me what real love and resilience mean. No matter what lies ahead, nothing can defeat us now." Standing closely together, the Harrington family silently vowed to face whatever the future held, secure in the unbreakable bond they'd forged through shared pain, struggle, and forgiveness. Yet even as peace enveloped their lives, one final surprise awaited, this time not a secret or betrayal, but something joyful and unexpected. Several weeks later, Serafina discovered she was pregnant, a miracle neither she nor Leander had anticipated. Sharing the news privately, she found Leander overcome with emotion, deeply moved by the thought of having another chance at parenthood, free from past mistakes and pain. "This child," he whispered tenderly, placing his hand gently over Serafina's abdomen, "will never know secrets or betrayal, only love, trust, and absolute security." Ellis embraced his parents warmly, overjoyed by the unexpected gift of a sibling, recognizing the symbolism of this new life as proof that their family had truly healed, fully embracing the possibility of happiness once thought lost forever. Their journey had been difficult, marked by pain and betrayal, yet the Harringtons had emerged stronger, wiser, and more compassionate. Now their family stood as a testament to the power of forgiveness, honesty, and unwavering love. As the sun set gently over San Francisco, the Harrington family stood united, hearts filled with hope and gratitude, ready to face the future hand in hand, confident that nothing, no secret, no betrayal, no obstacle, could ever break their bond again.